Section 8. Plausible hypernaturalism. I believe several reasonable objections to the application of the safe gambit to the afterlife question may immediately appear. After all, the safe gambit card game is an empirically relatable situation, while a post-death existence is not. So is the logic really transitory? Furthermore, why not apply the safe gambit to every unverifiable claim? Why give the afterlife credence instead of the boogeyman? These questions misunderstand a critical aspect of the proper use of the safe gambit: unverifiability. In the card game, the important part is not the cards, but the unknown odds and asymmetry of outcomes. You have never played the game before, you don't even know if there are any red cards in the deck, and you've never heard of anyone who has played the game before. Yet you must play it. In the case of the boogeyman, we intuitively know we shouldn't behave as if a boogeyman exists, on the basis that much verifiable experience suggests the boogeyman is a fairy tale that exists to scare children into good behavior. Though, is the concept of the afterlife really any different? It certainly is. The existence of the boogeyman is verifiably false based on the good testimony of other adults and your personal experience, not to mention the face value absurdity of the whole thing. Meanwhile, the afterlife cannot be verified at all. To experience its passing, you would have to die. I could imagine that one might categorically deny the existence of the afterlife on the basis that it sounds absurd, just like one might find the boogeyman absurd. While absurdity doesn't necessarily positively negate the possible existence of something or undermine the usage of the safe gambit, this is an understandable objection and does make accepting the logic difficult. The claims of absurdity are fair, considering popular ancient notions of the afterlife don't always make a believable case to many modern minds. To help resolve this implausibility, I have some speculations you might find thought-provoking. Like the speculation of our ancestors, my personal speculations have a lot to do with contemporary developments in our time and their ultimate implications. The ironic thing seems to be that the more we understand the upper limits of science, the more conceivable the idea that something like the afterlife could exist. If you already believe the afterlife could exist, this particular flavor of speculation might just feel odd to you, and I encourage you to skip it or read it with a grain of salt. To everyone else, I would like to reiterate that I am trying to make the case that some form of the afterlife has a non-zero chance of existing, and that it potentially has something to do with your time in life, not any particular presentation of the afterlife. I am only making a presentation of it here to demonstrate its plausibility, not asserting it as true. To begin, I would like to address the paradoxical use of the word supernatural. Typically, this term is used to describe phenomena that appear to break or subvert the laws of nature. However, this usage presents a logical contradiction. If something can occur in our universe, it must, by definition, be part of the natural order, even if we don't understand how it has occurred. This leads us to an important distinction. What we often call supernatural really just breaks our human understanding of nature, but is actually perfectly natural in the grand scheme of things. To circumvent this paradox in this work, I will be using the term hypernatural instead, which encompasses something that occurs or exists within the bounds of reality, but exceeds our present scientific knowledge. To give an example of the distinction, an ancient human would probably think an airplane is supernaturally flying by somehow breaking the natural laws of the universe, while we know it would be more accurate for the ancient human to understand the plane as a hypernatural phenomenon. It simply exceeds their current understanding. On the other hand, to a modern human, the airplane isn't hypernaturally or supernaturally flying. It's just naturally flying, because we currently understand the natural laws that permit flight. Likewise, by shifting our perspective from supernatural to hypernatural, we open ourselves to the possibility that seemingly impossible events could have natural explanations. We just haven't discovered them yet. This approach allows us to maintain scientific skepticism while remaining open to expanding our understanding of the universe. Viewed from this lens, it is not impossible that there is a perfectly natural explanation for even something like the afterlife. It just sounds hypernaturally implausible to us today. While I can't possibly give you a proven answer now, I do have two theories based on the current trajectory of scientific development and their ultimate implications. To be very clear, both require a lot of unverifiable assumptions, and I am not suggesting either is true. This is purely an exercise to demonstrate why there is a non-zero chance something like a post-death eternal existence exists. The first example of how a hypernatural afterlife could exist is if we live in a simulated reality, or something like a simulation. The afterlife and simulation theory sound like completely opposite concepts, until you notice their odd similarities. To show what I mean, suppose we are actually in a grand simulation. In our experience, we typically run a simulation for a purpose, which usually is to test something on a computer before it is deployed in reality, similar to how an engineer might use a computer to simulate a bridge before it is actually built. Of course, in this case, the something being tested could be us, and the examination could be based on the decisions we make given certain circumstances. During the test period, every thought, action, intent, and circumstance could be recorded as data. The test would naturally also have criteria for what passes and fails, and a final judgment would be assigned at the end of the test, presumably at the moment we die. If we pass the test, we are deployed into reality. If we fail the test, we are not. Comparing typical presentations of the afterlife, we find if we live in a simulation, and the simulation's purpose is as a test, then it is almost a perfect analog for how many religions have imagined the afterlife across all of human history. For clarity, I don't think we live in a simulation. I simply present the idea to show that if you accept the non-zero possibility that we live in a simulation, then one should consider accepting a non-zero possibility that something like the afterlife exists as well. Beyond simulation theory, there is the possibility that mankind or something post-mankind manages to overcome entropy. Considering the unimaginably complex technology required to do so, it is not inconceivable that something like time travel would be available to them. Perhaps as thanks for the efforts of all past sentient entities who made a positive contribution to the ultimate conquest of entropy, their consciousnesses are saved before they die and brought forward in time to enjoy the final victory. Again, I am not suggesting this is true, and am aware this example involves some astronomical assumptions. Still, I include it purely to illustrate that even if something like the afterlife does not exist, it could eventually exist thanks to the hypothetically infinite potential of intelligent beings making exponential technological progress. Beyond these two examples, there certainly are other chillingly plausible hypernatural theories for something like the afterlife, and perhaps even theories for the existence of God or gods. Still, I hope the examples shared are sufficient to get someone who rejects the possibility of the afterlife based on previous notions of it to consider the non-zero possibility that it could exist. To be very clear, my personal opinion is that even though the examples provided are arguably plausible, I still think they are far from accurate. I suspect if there is something real behind our notion of an afterlife or God or gods, those things are actually infinitely more complex than we could ever hope to imagine or visualize with any accuracy. Yet overall, I hope this makes it clear why something like the afterlife can become more plausible as humanity's collective understanding of reality develops, and why we shouldn't totally dismiss its existence. If we can't dismiss it, we have to use whatever we can to evaluate it, or at the very least, manage it.